Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. We are today talking about chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching. And boy, if I had to put a top 5 in terms of the best verses or the most important verses, I think this would be one of them. I'm going to read the chapter twice. It's kind of long, but I'll read it now and then I'll read it at the end. The avoidance of chaos. The highest virtue does not flaunt itself, and thus is retained. The lowest virtue seeks to preserve itself, and thus is lost. The highest virtue is naturally without action, and thus needs no action. The lowest virtue acts, and thus needs to act. The highest benevolence is naturally so, and has no need to practice benevolence. The highest righteousness is naturally so, and must act upon itself. The highest propriety is naturally so, and if it is not reciprocated, it will enforce itself. When the Tao is lost, it is replaced by virtue. When virtue is lost, it is replaced by benevolence. When benevolence is lost, it is replaced by righteousness. When righteousness is lost, it is replaced by propriety. When propriety is lost through lack of loyalty and good faith, it is the beginning of chaos. Prescience is a mere embellishment of the Tao and leads to stupidity. Thus, a worthy man relies on his strength and avoids his weaknesses. He embraces the former and discards the latter. So one of the reasons that this chapter is so powerful and so important is, first of all, it deals with motivation. The first few lines about virtue and benevolence and righteousness going and all leading to propriety, basically it's asking you to decide, is it better to act good for the sake of acting good, or is it better to act good because that is who you are as a person? This is a very debated thing in philosophical schools and our understanding of right and wrong. You know, like, is it okay to do the right thing if the motivation to do that is just to look like you're doing the right thing? And I think Taoists would argue that no, it's not. You should want to do the good thing because it's inherently the good thing to do, and you are a good person. Again, this is a hugely debated thing in philosophical schools. Different philosophies have different answers to this, but a Taoist response basically says that no matter if your intention is good, then that can be sustained. But if your intention is to look good by doing good, eventually that superficial reason will bubble up to the surface and will take control. A lot of people will compare this to moments in history like the French Revolution or World War II, and they'll say, you know, even if you have the best superficial intention, that intention will eventually come through, and your motivation for doing something won't be in the right place. And if it's not in the right place, eventually, you know, life takes its toll. Life is complicated. There are many gray areas, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But eventually, corruption will seep in and you will be left with nothing. And so part 2, or the middle part of the verse, deals with when the Tao is lost, it's replaced by virtue. So when being a good person, being a genuinely good egg, someone who just naturally does the right thing, when that's lost, you replace it with virtue. You replace it with these tenets, these beliefs that, you know, well, I believe these things. I trust in them. I'm virtuous. I'm going to do the right thing because I'm virtuous. Like I'm supposed to do these things. I'm supposed to look good. But when virtue is lost, it's replaced by benevolence. Well, it's the right thing to do. I'm not hurting anybody, you know. I'm benevolent. I'm a good person. I'm doing these things because I want to be a good person. I have this benevolent approach to it. When benevolence is lost, it is replaced by righteousness. This is often translated as like kind of the rule of law, well, I didn't break a law. I did the right thing, like I'm following the law. I wouldn't get arrested for doing this. So it's the right thing to do. And then when righteousness is lost, it is replaced by propriety. And that's often translated as ritual. And a ritual is just something you do in your daily life that brings you comfort, that brings you security. You have done this thing a million times and it's fine. That is the lowest form of embracing the Tao, like that really does. And, it says in the next thing, when propriety is lost through lack of loyalty and good faith, it is the beginning of chaos. So once you're at that ritual stage where you're just following the motions of being a good person, that is the next step to chaos. And it's because you've lost the way, you've lost the truth of what it means to be a good person and to embody Tao. I think it's worth saying that although the Tao Te Ching is, I think, a very well-written instruction manual on how to try and live your life with Tao, it is not the Tao itself. The Tao is this universal structure and energy that when you work with it, life flows. But when you flow against it, you are in chaos. You are living for each day, trying to survive, very superficial, very apparent of what people say about you and how you act. Whereas with Taoism, you don't care. You know the right path. And so essentially it's this ladder of deterioration from Tao to virtue to benevolence to righteousness to propriety to chaos. And we're talking about motivation and what stimulates us to do the right thing. Many philosophies around the world have said, they kind of look at it from the opposite way and they say, well, as long as you're doing the right thing, that's good. And Taoism is trying to get at the heart of, why are you doing the right thing? Why are you interested in Taoism is kind of the main question that this is asking. What appeals to you with the idea of Tao? Is it just to be a good person? Is it to be able to flaunt it to other people and to say, oh, well, I'm a Taoist, so, I've got it all figured out. Your religion isn't as good as my philosophy. That is a really superficial level. And so if you're interested in Taoism to understand some superficial Chinese philosophy and, tout it over your friends and say, oh my gosh, look how good I am, you're completely missing the point of Taoism. You're living in ritual and chaos, which is not the vibe. It's not the thing you're interested in. And the final bit, basically talks about why this is the case. And essentially, life is a gray area. When you try and apply benevolence or righteousness or propriety to situations, and when you try and embrace that fully, you lead to all kinds of situations where atrocity and terror and sadness can become a real daily thing. We know that there are laws out there that are not benevolent. They're not living with Tao. There are laws that impact people in a horrible way. And you can use these laws to justify horrible actions, horrible, illegal, monstrosities. But technically, they are legal because, well, it's in the law. I'm just following orders. And so what it's trying to say here is that any motivation other than trying to live with Tao, trying to be a genuinely good person for your own sake, for the sake of who you are as a person, it's absolutely possible. But when you have those motivations that come in that aren't like that, they are the superficial ones. They're the ones where you want to look good, or you just want to follow orders, or you're just following your routine. You wake up and you do this every single day. Those are not motivations that support a good life or a healthy life or a life with Tao. And it is by following this manual with all its mistakes, with all its issues, with all its problems, that you can get onto that right track. The world is full of good people bad people, and just kind of people in the middle. And it is absolutely possible to go from one category to the other. And through embracing many of the teachings of Taoism, the hope is that you get to that good stage where you naturally just make the decisions that don't hurt you, don't hurt others, don't hurt the universe. That is the idea, is that by following and learning from the wisdom in this book, you hopefully reach a point where you are living with Tao, where you are just naturally, you make the right decision because it's the right decision. Not because a law said it, not because it's a ritual, not because you're trying to be a good person, you're trying to be benevolent, but because it is just naturally the way you want to act, and the way that you act without being encumbered by anything else, without the appearance or superficiality. And so that's why this chapter is so powerful, and it's one of the longer ones in the Tao. I didn't show you before, but I will now. That is it's up here as well. And it, like I said, it's a hotly debated thing in philosophical schools, the idea of what motivates us to be a good person, or what motivates us to make the choices that we make. And Taoism essentially makes the controversial claim that unless your motivation is kind of motivation itself, you have the ability to descend that ladder down to chaos and down to making really bad decisions.